This
session.
conference will now be recorded.
And is everyone able to see my screen? Is it visible? Okay. So this is where we are right now. So we have all the things that we require. So we have build our release and etc. So let me see, where are we? Okay, so we somewhere are here, wherein we are telling that there is a developer who's committing the code, and as and when the code is getting committed, then you have the branch policies and etc. triggering the sonar, and then finally you have the build pipeline getting triggered. Since I have a continuous integration integrated within my pipelines, which goes ahead and produces something known as the artifact. In our case, it's a zip file, a .zip file, just for .NET Core. And from this point around, we went ahead and extended our capability into something known as a release environment, wherein we are taking the code. And what we did the other day is that we went ahead into the portal.azure.com, created a web app, established a service connection between the Azure portal and the DevOps portal, and then released our code. So what we did is that we manually went ahead and created the particular application, or we manually went ahead and created this infrastructure, which was the resource group and the dev web app. Now I'm not talking about multi-stage yet. I'm not bringing in these stages yet. So we'll get them in a moment. But my concern here is that I am creating these manually, like the resource group, the web application, everything is being created manually right now. As of now, everything is being created manually. Why don't I use my automation skill, which is the ARM template or PowerShell scripting, or later when we learn Terraform? Why can't I use that with Azure DevOps? That's the concept that we need, or that's the concept that we're going in today. So this until here is something that the developers are doing in the same repository or in a different repository. We as DevOps engineers also have a role to play here. So we as DevOps engineers come in place to give the template files like ARM or PowerShell and etc. So now me as a DevOps engineer will have to write something like the JSON file. In our case, since we learned ARM, I'm talking just about ARM for now. So I have the JSON file. I'm writing this JSON file in my local machine, and I'm committing this JSON file into the Azure DevOps repository, the same repository or a different repository, anything is fine. And once I'm committing this, the intention that I have here is that I want to use this JSON file in the release pipeline in order to automatically create my infrastructure. So what I will do is that I will have a copy pipeline. I'm not talking about a build pipeline, but I'm just talking about a copy pipeline, which will just add, or which will just make this particular ARM template as a part of the as the part of the artifact. So the only task of this pipeline is to just do a copy. This pipeline will be coming from, let's say, my develop branch, and this pipeline will just produce the artifact in the form of the JSON templates. Meaning the artifact here is nothing but our ARM template. So I want to make sure that the artifacts are ARM templates, and in the release process, in now the release process, I want to automatically provision things like the resource group and things like, let's say, the web application. In our case, since we are dealing with basic resources, things like resource group and things like the web application, these automatically should be provisioned and then I need to do the code deployment on top of it. So automatic provisioning of my infrastructure, which is the resource group and the web application, this needs to be automatically provided. Me being, let's say, a DevOps engineer should not go into the portal every time and create this out. And this needs to be automatically provisioned using the Azure DevOps pipelines. And I need to version control the history of commits that are made to my JSON file, meaning I should be able to see what are the commits that are made to my JSON file and so on and so forth. This entire process is called infrastructure as code, infra as code in short. A very, very, very widely asked interview questions and a widely used case scenarios for us as a role of a DevOps engineer. So what I'm going to do is I'm here in my pipelines, or firstly, let's start with the repository. I will create another repository called, let's say, ARM repository. I want to keep my JSON file separate from my code. So I'm saying this is ARM repository and I'm saying create. So I have an empty repository that got created, and in my local machine, I have the Visual Studio Code open. So I will write an ARM template which will give me an app service plan and a web app. These are the two things that I just want. So I will start with ARM hyphen. I get a blank template, a skeleton out here. I don't need the outputs, neither I don't need the functions. So I'll just get rid of these both. And in here, in the resources, I'll just start typing ARM hyphen plan. Firstly, I want to go ahead and create the app service plan. So this is the app service plan, a very, very simple resource wherein you have the name. The type is Microsoft.web / server farms. App service plans are called server farms in Microsoft terminology. Then you have the location from resource group.location, which is good enough. Then finally you have something called as the SKU. I'm creating this in F1 with a capacity of 1. I don't need the tags. I can take it out. But I want to parameterize this. What I'll do is that I'll introduce a parameter called ASP name, app service plan name, and I'm not giving any default value out here. And what I'll do is that instead of writing this name, I'll say it is parameters ASP name. So I'm just giving the parameters ASP name, and I'll also change it here. So this is one resource that got created. The next thing that I want to create is the web app itself. So there is web app, and this is how the resource looks. So I can just remove the tags for now. I don't need the tags. I don't want to tag my resource. And always remember, guys, is that a web app should, or web app always will depend upon the app service plan. So without an app service plan, you cannot have the web app created. You need the app service plan first, and only then you can go ahead and provision the web app. So that's the reason I firstly went ahead and provisioned the plan, this line to this line, like 14 to 26. Now there is the web app. So what I'll do is that I'll create a new parameter here, probably called web app name, and in here I'll just say this parameters web app name. All this is good. So the name, the type, the API version, the location is good. And in here, if you observe, the type is Microsoft.web / sites. So it's a website that I'm creating. And now I would say that it depends upon the server farm, meaning the app service plan that I'm creating at this particular line. So since I changed the name, I'll just remove the name that's given here and I'll say parameters app service plan name. So this is how I'm establishing the dependency. And in here, in the properties, I'll just change the name of the web app to parameters web app name and the server farm ID, meaning the app service ID. to just be whatever I've given in the above. So I'll just take this out. I'll say parameters app service plan name. I'm not going into the detail of explanation of the ARM template since we've covered it already. I'm just giving you an overview on how I'm writing this out. Now I'll just save it and I'll just say this is ARM web app.json. So I have an ARM web app.json. Now what I'm going to do is I'll just clone this out and I'll clone this repository in my VS Code. So I'll say open this extension and I'm making a local copy of this particular repository, and I'll start copying all my code. That is just the readme.md file that I do have in here, and I'll just say open a new window. So I have these two things in the background. I have, or in one tab I have the ARM template created. In the other tab I have the ARM template repository. I have the repository getting, let's say, cloned. So what I'm going to do is I'll go into my folder, into, let's say, the H drive of my folder of my computer, and copy this template and paste it inside this repository called ARM repository. So I'll say new and I'll say folder and I'll say infra and I will paste my ARM template out here. So I'm just taking my ARM template and I'm pasting it outside inside this particular folder, which is being version controlled. So I have the infra which is uncommitted. So I'll go into changes, stage this, and since this branch doesn't have policy in the real time environment, this branch will have policy, so you cannot directly go ahead and do a commit. You'll have to come through a feature. But for my case scenario, I'm just doing a direct commit on this branch. And I'll say this is infra commits. And I'll just say sync changes. So I am now syncing, or I am now making sure to push back all my changes into the repository where I cloned from. So that's what I'm doing as at this point. And if I come here and if I just refresh the screen, I have the infra files. I have my ARM web app.json. And if you observe, I have not declared my values yet. I have never passed my values. I said ASP name, I said web app, I said resources, and inside resources also I never passed my name. So there is no way that I mentioned my name. There is no way I declared my name for the app service plan or the web app. I'll tell you what is the reason for it. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and create a pipeline, and I will say new pipeline here, and I'll just use a classic editor for now. And I will say the source repository is ARM repository and the branch is main branch, and I'll say continue. In here I'll start with an empty job and I'll just call this pipeline as infra copy pipeline, and it's a very simple pipeline that I want to do, and all I want to do here is a task called copy task. So I'm just naming my job as copy. I'm adding a task, and in here this is the only thing that I want to do, and it's telling that, you know what, I need your attention. What is your source folder? What are the contents that you want to copy, and what is the target folder? So the source folder is this one, which is called infra. I'll say okay, and the contents are every file that starts with .json, irrespective of whatever it is. I'll say every file that starts with .json, please go ahead and take it out and come and, let's say, copy it. And I want to copy it into the build.artifact staging directory. That's the directory in which I want to paste it out. And finally, I'll put this in hold. I'll say this is the next task is publish, and in here I'll just go ahead and say publish build artifacts, and you get the path to publish here. Like this is the variable build.artifact staging directory. Just in case if you don't remember, I'm just copying it out and pasting it in here. So what I'm doing right now is that I'm taking all my JSON files and I'm just throwing it into the build.artifact staging directory so that I can use it in my release pipeline. So that I can use this in my release pipeline out here, and I will say save in queue. I'll say added copy tasks. It's a very simple pipeline. It'll take like about a couple of seconds to go ahead and run. So I have sorry. So I have committed my code, my ARM templates into the develop branch, and I have just attached this particular develop branch or just with this particular main branch, let's say, to a copy pipeline, which just produces the artifact as a JSON template. So I'm just doing the build process, or I'm just doing the copy process till here. And once the artifact is produced, or once the artifact is published, this is how it's going to look like. So it is arm web.json. So this is the only thing the pipeline had to do, and the pipeline did it. So it went ahead, did a copy files task, wherein it said with that particular pattern, I'm able to find one file there, which is with .json. So I took that file and I copied it out for you into the artifact staging directory. Now what I want to do right now is I now want to go into the release pipeline, and this is the release pipeline that I had for the code deployment. I just added this pipeline. So in here, I have an app service deploy task wherein it's just telling that it's just telling that please code and deploy this particular app service, or just deploy this code onto an app service that will be there in Azure portal. But I have deleted it long ago. So if I just refresh it, I should be able to see this. So there is no app service with this particular name. So there's nothing with this particular name. So what I'm going to do is now I'll add a task here. I'll add a task which is called ARM template deployment. This will be the first task out here, which will create the infrastructure for me. And after the infrastructure is created, is where I want to go ahead and deploy the application service. So this is what I'm doing firstly. I am automating the infrastructure creation. So I'll say create infra. I'm automating the infrastructure creation. And once the infrastructure is created, I'm going ahead and deploying my code on top of the created infrastructure. So in here, I'll go to my release pipeline. And as of now, my release pipeline only has this particular build pipeline as the upstream source. These are called as the upstream sources. Meaning this is the upstream source of the build pipeline. And if I just click on this one out, this is giving me this artifact out here, which is nothing but a .zip file. So this is the artifact that is corresponding to the code, meaning it's all the code which is compiled, and it's like compiled and sitting there. I also want to add the artifacts of my infrastructure, because now I have two different teams that are getting involved, one being my development team, the other being the DevOps engineering team. And the development team is giving you the raw code, I'm compiling it out. The DevOps team is coming with, let's say, the ARM templates, and I want to copy it out. So I copied it out already, and now I'll say add another artifact to the pipeline, and I will say the source build pipeline is something like infra copy pipeline. This is the pipeline that I have, and I'll say the latest version of the artifact is what I want to pick, and I will say add. So I am adding one more artifact to my pipelines. You can add multiple artifacts to your pipelines, there is no limit. I am adding one more upstream source. I'm telling my release pipeline that you know what, just not this, but also this. Please go ahead and take this also. And I can also have a continuous integration trigger or a continuous deployment trigger enabled here. And now I will go inside this task, and there is the ARM template deployment. So firstly, we do not have this, so I'll just remove this out. We only had the app service deploying this particular, let's say, in this particular pipeline as a task. I'll say add one more, and something that I'm searching for right now is ARM template. So I'm just typing ARM, and I have an ARM template deployment task out here. This is what I want to add, and I am getting it on the top. Reason being, first I want to create my infrastructure, and only then I'd like to go ahead and deploy something on the created infrastructure. This is what is the protocol, or this is what is the procedure. So I'll say this is create infra task, and it is now telling me, okay, fine, where do you want to create the infrastructure? I'm now saying that, okay, fine, please create it inside a resource group. Great. Now it's asking me what is the Azure Service Manager connection. I'll select the one that we had yesterday, or we had created yesterday, which is like this one, which is DevOps 7 shared. So I'll just take this out. This is the connection that I created, and there's there is something known as a subscription. So if I just refresh it out, and if I select, I have the Azure subscription getting reflected. So I'm taking this, and now it is asking me for the resource group. So I do not have any resource groups that are there. There are no resource groups on my Azure portal. I'm starting from the scratch. So should I go ahead and manually create the resource group? No. But does the ARM template create the resource group? No, because ARM template by default doesn't have a capability to go ahead and create the resource groups. So how do I resolve this issue? Is that this task, right, which is ARM template deployment, this will take care of your resource group creation by itself. You do not have to go ahead and explicitly create a resource group in the Azure portal for this task to be successful. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to add a variable called dollar open close parenthesis. I'll say RG name. Not even passing the value directly here. I want to make this reusable. So I'm passing a dollar $RG name out here. And in location, I can click on this drop down, and I can select a location like East US 2. This is where I want to create my infrastructure in. Finally, it's now asking me a couple of things. It's telling what is your template location, meaning where is your ARM template. I understand you want to deploy your ARM template. Where is your ARM template? I'll say click on these three dots, and I will now say that, okay, fine, there the ARM template it's is, let's say, inside this particular pipeline called infra copy pipeline, and this is the template that I want to deploy. It's now asking me, does this template have a parameter file with it? There is no parameter file that I created because it's a very simple template that I had. So I'm saying there is no parameter file, don't worry about it. Now it's asking me, are there any parameters in your template? Meaning, have you declared any parameters in your template which doesn't have values? Definitely yes. I have multiple parameters in my template which does not have a value declaration out here. So I have the ASP plan name, I have the web app name, and etc., which does not have the value declaration. For this, what I'm going to do is that I am going to declare the value of these parameters, the app service plan name and the web app name, using Azure DevOps. I'm not going to directly declare them. I'm not going to directly declare them. I'm going to use Azure DevOps for this declaration. So I'll click on these three buttons, and it is now going to identify what are the parameters that require values. In here, I will again pass variables. I'm not passing direct parameters out here. I'm passing pipeline variables, and I'm saying ASP name, and whatever is the name of the web app, I'm just taking it, placing it here, and I'm telling web app name. I'm saying okay. This is how we declare parameter overrides, or this is how we are declaring that okay, fine, these are the parameters that needs to be declared for, let's say, Azure DevOps to create this particular template. Now, if you look at this task, I have created multiple parameters called RG name. So I just make a note of it. I set the name of the RG, and there is, let's say, the app service plan name, and there's, let's say, something known as a web app name. Now, the RG name should always start with the environment name. Let's say I'm deploying it in dev, so it should start with dev hyphen RG. This is how the name should look like. The web app name should also always start with the environment name. In my case, it is dev, so it should be dev, probably something like site Ola or site healthcare US East 3-4 or something like that, US East 2 or something like this. Some name which is, let's say, unique. So that's the reason I'm just giving something like this, a name which should be unique. Sorry, this is the web app name. This how the web app name should look like. The app service plan name can be something like the name of the environment, which is dev, and can be 01 or something like this, just to be unique out here. So if you look at the naming pattern that I'm following, it should always contain dev here, or if I am deploying it to QA, it should be QA hyphen RG. It should be dev, then it should be, let's say, QA hyphen plan or QA plan. This is dev, so I have something like QA site healthcare, something like this. This is the naming convention that I follow in my entire project. So if you look at the parameter that is changing, it is dev. The rest all is a constant, right? So I want to make sure I also reuse it. So what I'll do is, on top of everything, I'll declare another parameter called environment. And I'll say the environment name is called dev. For a deployment stage called development, I have a stage called development. For this stage, the name of the parameter is called dev. This is what I am now trying to declare out here. Is that I'm telling that, you know what, for an environment called development, meaning when you are creating the ARM template in an environment called development, please take the environment name as dev, and the rest all can be something like dollar, the name of the environment, the name of the RG. This is how I concatenate multiple variables together. Again, the same thing, just copying the entire brackets. I'm saying, since this is dev, this dev will be represented now by dollar environment. This dev will be now represented by dollar environment out here. This is how I am declaring my variables. So the very first variable that I need to declare is probably something like environment. So what I'll do here is I'll use my variable sections in Azure DevOps, and I'll say add a variable. I'm saying environment, and this variable is dev for an environment called development, not the release. The release is going to represent your entire release pipeline. Later, you are going to add multiple stages in this release pipeline. So that's the reason I'm saying that this is environment called dev, and this is particularly to an environment called development. And I'll add multiple variables like RG name. I'll take the entire string, I'll place it here. So whatever is the environment, please you're getting it here. Great. This is dev, then concatenate it with -rg, and this is a common variable, meaning this doesn't change. The only thing that is changing is dev for dev, QA for QA, stage for stage, prod for prod. That's what it is changing. So I'll now say this is ASP plan name, add this in, and I'll say it is $environment 101. Again, I'm scoping this as a common variable. These are all called common variables. And finally, web app name, and then I'll take this entire parameter and I'll place it in here. This is the web app name out here that I want to go ahead and create out. So my parameters are all sorted. Like this task is good, but this task is still throwing an error because firstly, the service connection is something that I deleted the other day. So I'll just change my service connection to something like DevOps master. And now it is asking me, okay, fine, great. Where do you want to deploy the app service to? Or where do you want to deploy the code to? Can you give me the target app service here? Or can you give me the name of the target app service name? As of now, I do not have an app service. My app service is getting created in this step. So question for you all guys, I need inputs here. What should be the name of the app service that I need to declare here? Guys, did you all follow my question? I'm asking something.
Yeah, uh, which is you created earlier, app registered, right? That name, right?
Correct. That's the no the name of the app service, or let's say the app service, meaning the name of the web app. And if I look at the web apps here, or if I look at the app service here, I don't have anything that is there on my portal. There is no app service that I'm creating. I mean, there is no app service on my portal that is there yet. I intend to create it in this step. So what should be the name that I should pass here? Now this is an issue. Anyone? Guys, please think about this. There is no right, there is no wrong answer. I'm expecting some inputs from you all, so that's the reason I'm asking this question. Is if you were dealing with this task, what is the name of the app service you want to basically declare here? Anyone? Guys, any inputs, please? I'm not going to move until unless I get some inputs from you all guys. So
So
give me
is that
some input.
application?
Mhm.
No, is that application going to be?
Sorry, is that application? Sorry, I didn't get your question.
No, I mean application's name we need to give or something. App
Correct. The
name.
application name is something that you need to give, but you haven't created the application yet, right?
Yeah.
So what is the name that you want to give here?
Any name we can give.
Okay, any name, as in what is this input really looking for? What are we really trying to do here in this step?
Build the release pipeline.
Sorry, sorry, I didn't get you. Subramaniam, I didn't
No,
get you.
yeah, no, release the build the release pipeline that way.
meaning release the code onto a web app.
Correct.
So what is it expecting here then? What is this task really expecting? Guys, did anyone practice this out? Naveen, Surya, Shiva, Srija, anyone? I'm expecting some inputs here, guys. So, and again, this is not to embarrass someone, this is to test your own knowledge to understand where we stand. So, guys, can you all please give me some inputs? So, if you are not understanding this, then at least please tell that you're not understanding, guys, so that I can explain it out. If you're just on mute and just not responding back to my question, I won't be able to understand anything. So, I'm just moving forward. So, this is the name of the app service that I am creating in the first step, and the name of the app service that I'm creating in the first step is $web app name, which I passed it on the variable section, which is this particular application, which is dev site healthcare, but which is not created. So I will just say it is $web app name out here. Got $. Here. Let me take this out. This is the name of the app service that's being created in the step one. Guys, are you all following this? Yes, no, maybe. Can you give me
Yes,
that input at
yes,
least? Anyone else who's not following this out? Guys, I'm okay to explain again, but I need to understand whether you're following or not. So I will now say save this pipeline, and I'll now say creating an end-to-end pipeline, and I will say create a release right now. So after I save this out, I'll say create a release into the environment called development, and the release 3 has been created. The first thing that this release is going to do is that it's going to understand what are the tasks that I do have, and it's going to execute my tasks in a serial way. It's first going to come to this task called creating the infrastructure, and it is now going to deploy the entire ARM template that I have written in my local machine. So I have the entire ARM template. I am taking this ARM template and I am deploying it using this particular task out here called create infra. And the first thing it says is that resource group exists or not, it false. So it has successfully created a resource group called devrg. So if I come here, I did not have a resource groups to start with, and let me refresh this a couple of times. Come back here, let me see. Okay, it said resource group created successfully. It will take some time to reflect the same thing on the Azure portal. Yeah, I now have something called as a devrg out here, inside which if I go into the deployment section, I have this deployment created, which ended up creating me the dev plan, the dev site healthcare USCs too. That's what my ARM template did. It went ahead and it just created this entire infrastructure out here. After this, it's now going to something called as the dev site healthcare USCs too, and it is now releasing the code on the created infrastructure. So I am now not only making sure that the code deployment is automated, I am also making sure that the infrastructure deployment is automatically getting triggered out here. So in here, The code is, I mean, the inside the resource group, I have my dev plan, I have my the application, both of them got created. Now the code is also released on top of it. So if I just click on this and if I just say browse, I will now see a .NET application, a custom .NET application that I'm running, which is a version 4, which is there in my repository out there. Guys, did you all follow this? Any questions till here? Anyone, anything till here? Anyone, any questions till here? Now, this is a single stage release, meaning I just have a development stage out here. But I also want the QA environments like staging and the production, meaning I want multiple resource groups, multiple web apps, meaning each and every environment should have its own web app. So this is what I now want to go ahead and create. So I will not do anything different out here. I'll just say edit. I'll say edit this particular pipeline, and I already have a stage called development. There is something called clone. I will say this is QA. I'll say this is QA. I will clone this and say there is another environment called, let's say, prod. Let's keep it a bit simple today. Say prod. Each and everything has the same set of tasks, the same set of things out here. But what's going to change is the name of the environment. Now, if you look at this, all these variables, which is the app service plan name, the RG name, the web app name, are dependent upon the name of the environment. And the name of the environment should be dev for development, QA for QA, prod for prod. So what I'm going to do out here is that I'm now going to change the scope of my variable. Now this is dev for development. This should be QA for QA. Should be prod for prod. Now save this out. And now again I'll say create a release. Now I'll say create. This is now release 4, which is now going to development. It's trying, I mean, in development, I already have everything there, meaning I have the resource group, I have the code, everything deployed. So it's just going to take a minute or so to analyze whether everything is there or not. And after that, it will go into something called QA. Then it should, or it will go into something known as prod. It will deploy, let's say, my plan, my web applications in there. This is the out and out flow on what I want to achieve. And that's the reason I just gave these variables out here. So I gave some common variables and I gave some dynamic values out here, which will change for each and every environment. And I just cloned my tasks. I said, okay, fine, whatever is the development, the QA should be the same thing. And since the QA task is also having all the variables from the development task, so it's called RG name, then you have location east to west2, then you have basically a template, then you have the ASP plan name and the web name, everything declared as a variable. I don't have to worry about changing it out. Inside the task, I just have to basically go ahead and add 2 more variables out here. That's what I did until this point. Now it's doing an app service deployment. After this, it's going to go into the next stage. So development is done. It's now going into the QA. It will do the same thing what it did in development. Then it will go into prod. This is called as code promotion. meaning the code moving from one environment to the other. And guys, that's the reason I requested you all on Friday that please go ahead, read the basics of ARM so that we can use this knowledge in here. And if you see this, now it's going ahead and creating something called as a QARG. It's going ahead and creating the infrastructure for the QARG, and finally it will deploy the code on the QA basically web app that's being created in this particular step. So this is what I'm trying to achieve with this particular pipeline, and this is now called as a multi-stage pipeline. It's not a single stage pipeline, it's a multi-stage pipeline where the code is moving from one environment into the other and then being promoted into say or then being getting into the final destination, which is called prod. So if I look at the resource groups right now, I have something called QARG, and the code is being deployed on the QARG right now. So I have this one and the code is now being deployed onto the QARG right now. So this is how the code movement is being achieved. So any questions still here, guys? Anyone, any questions still here? Are you all able to follow this, guys? Is there any issue till here? Anyone, anything?
Like Kiran, we have created some service connection, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
like for which third-party application to talk with that service connection?
It is to talk with Azure Portal. Azure Portal is also a third party to Azure DevOps. I have created a service connection to establish the communication between Azure and Azure DevOps.
Okay. Yes. Like portal like between portal and
Portal
DevOps.
and the DevOps, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
And
thank you.
using that service connection only, I'm able to go ahead and do this deployment.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, any more questions here, guys? Guys, today's class is very, very important. Please practice it out. And in tomorrow's session, we are going to extend this knowledge. So this is just a very, very simple pipeline that I created in the real-time environment. It's going to be very much complicated. Please go through this. And in tomorrow's class, please let me know whatever doubts that you have. So we'll start with the Q&A session in tomorrow's class. Please make sure to practice it out and let me know in which area are you facing a little issues in. Okay, and I don't want to rush topics today, so please take this class video, please follow it out, please understand what I'm trying to do, and please try to follow the same thing and practice the same thing out. And we'll meet in tomorrow's session and we'll discuss more on this, guys. So if there are no more the questions, then have a great day ahead, and we'll meet tomorrow, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Kiran.
Thank you, guys. are sending this.
Hi Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.
Hi
Hello.
Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.
Hi
Hello.
Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.
Hi
Hello.
Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.
Hi
Hello.
Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.
Hi
Hello.
Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.
Hi
Hello.
Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.
Hi
Hello.
Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.
Hi
Hello.
Mitul. Hi Mitul.
Yeah, hi, Mr.
Good morning. Yeah.
Batsman is available, right?
Yeah.
So supporting. Yeah. See, in this you are sending this.